but I have a lot of histamine 1 receptors in the brain. So if I antagonize the histamine 1 receptors in the brain, I get drowsiness. That's why when you use allergics, you become drowsy. But if I give you a drug that cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, it can't actually go into the brain and antagonize the histamine receptors in the brain, so I don't get drowsy. So that's one way of counteracting it. Or if I give you a drug that is very specific, let's just quickly change this around. Another side effect you can get with chlorpheniramine is a very dry mouth, because it acts on the muscarinic receptors and blocks them. And the muscarinic system is also responsible for salivation. So if you block the muscarinic system, you don't get salivation. The mouth will become dry. So if I give you this antihistamine that acts on all of these, chlorpheniramine, I inadvertently also give you a dry mouth. If I give you an antihistamine that only acts on the histamine 1 receptor and not also on the muscarinic receptor, you won't get the dry mouth, but you will get the antihistamine effect that you want. Does that make sense? Okay, the more broad, the more side effects. Multipotent, the more receptors I'm working on, the more drama you can expect. So drama, side effects. Do you remember about the blood-brain barrier? Yes. So the other example I used was if I use an antihistamine that cannot cross the blood-brain barrier, then it can't go into the brain to cause that drowsiness. So you can still get an antihistamine that is histamine, antagonizes histamine 1 receptors, but because it can't go into the brain, it can't cause you the side effects of the first generation ones that can go into the brain. Okay, but now I'm going to kinetics. That's not really where I wanted to go with it. It's making sense? I think it's making sense. I hope it's making sense. I'm assuming it's making sense. So then we also get physiological antagonists of one another. So a physiological antagonist refers to things that antagonize each other's effect, but they work on completely different receptor systems. Completely different receptor systems. So the one I can use here for you guys, my favorite is the insulin and glucagon one. So your body would release a lot of glucagon when you don't have glucose in your bloodstream. Then your body would try and salvage glucose from everywhere to increase the glucose level in your blood. That's the effect. On the other side, on a completely different receptor system, your body has insulin. So insulin your body would release under normal circumstances. Don't think about diabetes, just think about normal circumstances. Your body would release a lot of insulin to decrease the blood sugar levels, to take the glucose and store it in the muscle. So they are working on different receptor systems and they have opposing effects. So making sense? So estrogen and progesterone are the same as well. I can't exactly remember how to explain this one anymore. I think it had to do with uterine growth and not growth. Don't think about it too much. And I had another one here, the sympathetic system, which is the adrenaline system, and the parasympathetic system, which is the relax system. Don't worry too much about those two. We will do them later. We will do parasympathetic and sympathetic later. The one is attack, run away, and the other one is relax and eat. Okay. And then we have another thing called chemical antagonism. So the easiest example of chemical antagonism, the one I would ask you if I ask you something in a test, it refers to antacids. So have you had heartburn before? You know when you go eat a garage pie and then afterwards you have heartburn. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you haven't eaten a garage pie before. Garage pies give heartburn. It's not a proven fact, it's just an opinion. So if you eat a garage pie, generally speaking in my case, you will get heartburn. So heartburn is basically just a lot of hydrogen atoms. So the hydrogen atoms, the hydrochloric acid in the stomach causes the pH to go very low. If the pH goes low, then you get the effect, then you get the burning sensation, then you get heartburn. So I can chemically antagonize that effect by taking those hydrogen atoms and binding them into a different molecule. So when they're bound, those hydrogen atoms can't burn you. They don't decrease the pH. So I can chemically antagonize the effect of the hydrogen atoms by binding something to them. Does it make sense? So I'm chemically antagonizing hydrogen's effect. And that's a chemical antagonism. Easy as that. What did I want to say here? I can't remember. Oh, this is a nice one as well. Another way we can also create drugs, another way drugs can function is when drugs mimic things in the body. So structural analogues. We have drugs that are structurally the same as testosterone or estrogen. We have drugs that are structurally the same to certain nucleotides and nucleosides in the body. And this is the example I have on the slides here. The example here on the slides is how we can interfere with HIV's life cycle. We can fool HIV into thinking the drug is what it needs to incorporate into the viral DNA. So when the HIV virus itself, incorporates this drug into its into its viral DNA, it actually took an error and copied the error into the genetic code. And with this error, HIV can't actually replicate itself anymore. So we give people ARVs. ARVs, a lot of them contain structural analogues to nucleosides and nucleotides. These nucleosides and nucleotides, under normal circumstances, HIV would use to make viral DNA. But now, since we've given them fake nucleotides and nucleosides, we are completely confusing the virus. And the virus has no idea that it's actually taking an error and putting the error into its genetic code, and then it can't actually continue its life cycle. So examples of this is tenofovir, imitriptyline, norefavirenz, lamivudine, stavudine, zidovudine. I just want to put it out there. There's a lot. So it's like pharmacology. Pharmacology is not just difficult in terms of understanding it. There's also a lot of study work. So there's also a lot of things you just have to sit and study and study and study. Abacavir is one as well. There is a lot. There's probably 20. I'm only halfway there. Not even halfway. Anyways, you guys get the idea? Yes? Okay. I've discussed these multipotent drugs enough. I think I'm tired of it now. I think you're tired of it as well. What I want to discuss is tolerance. So typically, like, think about addicts. Think about people who take meth. Think about people who take dacha as well. Actually, dacha also has an amount of tolerance to it. Think of people with drugs. Think of drugs. Drugs, guys, drugs. Think about smoking. If you smoke one cigarette when you're 16, you're probably smoking 20 when you're 20. Like a day. You're smoking one a day when you're 16, now you're smoking 20 a day at 20. Unless you don't have enough money, then you probably bum 20 cigarettes. That's anyways, typically what happens is when we use a drug a lot. So let's use the example of heroin again. When you use heroin a lot, we are stimulating a receptor that would, under normal circumstances, not have been stimulated. Think about what activities cause endorphins to be released. Any ideas? What makes you extremely happy? It's difficult to explain an endorphin. Endorphins are released when you do a very pleasurable activity. So, for example, for some people it could be running up a mountain. For some people it could be racing a car. For some people it could be for Oscar students, it could be shooting watermelons, like maybe even doors. But we release endorphins for different things, and these endorphins we release aren't constant. So endorphins are released for things that our minds see as rewarding activities. Does that make sense? So it doesn't happen a lot. So if we synthetically cause our body to get these endorphin release effects or this happiness effect of the endorphins a lot, our body would try and restore homeostasis. So when it tries to restore homeostasis, it would start making less of those receptors for those endorphins. So your body is actually trying to make you unhappy, but it's also to restore homeostasis. Does it make sense? So when we synthetically augment an effect, by augmenting an effect I mean we cause an effect to happen more than it actually should under normal circumstances. So you use heroin to stay happy the whole time, where under normal circumstances your endorphin system would only be activated once a week. Now you're activating it every day of the week. Then your body would stop making those receptors. Then you become tolerant towards that drug. Does that make sense? Okay. You can really use this in all examples of agonists. Wherever you use an agonist, you would get down regulation with time. Clinically, it doesn't always happen, but think about it, it's always possible when you use an agonist. Okay. It's not just as simple as making less of a receptor, down regulation. There's more versions of it. So when you use something that might cause our body's normal neurotransmitters, those like the acetylcholine in the muscle, to be released more, we can get something called tachyphylaxis. So, this is a nice one. When you use a lot of cocaine, if you use a lot of cocaine, you would get a lot of dopamine release. So, you're actually not giving a person new dopamine, you are causing the person's normal dopamine to be released more when you take cocaine. Did you know that? Okay, but you don't have to know that yet. No, you should know after today. So when a person takes a lot of cocaine, they get a lot of dopamine release. But it's not the cocaine is dopamine. Cocaine is actually causing your body to release its own dopamine faster and faster and faster. So now, because you're releasing your own dopamine faster and faster and faster, you can actually release so much dopamine that your body doesn't have any left. And as soon as that happens, you get tachyphylaxis. So tachyphylaxis is when you have completely exhausted one of the endogenous stores. So it could be noradrenaline, it could be dopamine, it could be a bunch of different things. One of the examples we also have are you guys don't actually use it in government at all, but it's when you have a cold and flu and you go and take, there's so many words, Sinucorn, or you take pseudoephedrine, or what's all the words? There's so many. All of the sinus tablets. If you take too much of them, they don't actually work anymore and you get more runny nose. And that's because of tachyphylaxis, because you've completely emptied your body's normal stores of adrenaline and noradrenaline. Now you can't get that vasoconstriction happening anymore. Don't worry too much about the finer detail, we'll discuss that a bit later. So tachyphylaxis, you have emptied your body's normal stores and you don't have the effect anymore. Make sense? I'm getting one yes, I'll just take one yes. Okay. We also have a phenomenon called, it's not a phenomenon unexplained. We have something called synergism or potentiation. So this is when two drugs together are better than, so one drug gives you 50, the other drug gives you 50 as well. When you put them together it's 100, but in the case of potentiation, when you put 50 and 50 together, you get 200. So this is potentiation. So some drugs actually make each other far more powerful than they would be alone. So an example of this is paracetamol and tramadol. You've seen in the hospitals you have Tramacet. Tramadol and paracetamol together, they potentiate each other and make each other much more effective. If you give a person tramadol is more effective for pain relief, but if you give a person tramadol and paracetamol, you need to use less tramadol to get the same effect. Okay, another example of this is when a person takes theophylline and salbutamol, but I'm going too far here. We'll discuss that when we get to asthma. Not asthma really, when we get to the sympathetic system. Otherwise I'm going to make it too complicated. I think I basically discussed downregulation already, and we're almost finished. What I want to show you on this is an old slide I made for the students when I was a student. So this is a cell basically, and inside the cell, these are the locations where we are acting, where the receptors would be. So we have certain drugs, especially hormones, that would go into your nucleus itself, and they would activate a portion of the DNA to transcribe and make more proteins. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But drugs can actually go, some drugs can go to your nucleus itself and cause your nucleus to make more of certain proteins. And those proteins can go on and have their effect long after the drug has left the system. Does that make sense? So this is a bit controversial, I'm going to say here, but think of people who play, or think of professional athletes. So a lot of professional athletes abuse testosterone. It's no secret. Think of Lance Armstrong. There's so many of them. When they abuse testosterone, they might leave the testosterone and go to the competition. And then they test negative for it. But the proteins that testosterone force the body to create from this area might still be active in the body, but we don't actually test for it. We test the testosterone in the bloodstream. But the testosterone causes certain proteins to be made, and those proteins have a physiological effect as well. So that physiological effect of those proteins might be continuing all the time, while you can't actually see the testosterone in the body anymore. Interesting? Okay. So that's an example of an intracellular receptor. Then we have these ion channels, like the ones I was talking about for the neuromuscular receptor, which I'm not actually sure if it is an ion receptor. But remember, we have ions, and if these ion channels open, we might get something flowing into a cell. Do you remember that you have chloride that also flows into cells? So if you have chloride in your brain, your central nervous system has a lot of chloride in the area as well. So if I give you something that activates this ion channel and chloride flows into the cell will become hyperpolarized, and then activation of the cell cannot happen. I'm going too far. That's too far. Scratch that part. It's too far. Okay. So we have ion channel receptors. And the last one I want to just show you is these serpentine receptors here. So these serpentine receptors are the ones we're going to discuss in a lot more detail in the parasympathetic and sympathetic system. So these serpentine receptors are activated on the outside of the cell, and then they cause a physiological change from the adrenal cyclase and onwards here. But once again, too much detail. Let's quickly see what I wanted to mention here. Give an example. These are a few review understanding. Let's quickly see an example. Outline the process involved and absorption. Okay, I think I've already done that. I did it in the video. Okay, so if I ask you to outline metabolism for me, you didn't do metabolism. But you did do metabolism on the video, so you have to go review it. Please review it. Let's just step a step back. If I ask you to outline distribution as part of pharmacokinetics, what would the answer be? Distribution is the process whereby drug molecules are distributed to various parts of the body until they actually go to the receptor site where they have a pharmacological effect. But now that part I mentioned is actually too much. So distribution is just how the drug molecule distributes throughout the body. Simple as that. If I ask you to outline absorption, absorption is the process whereby which the drug you take actually enters into the circulatory system and then distributes from the circulatory system into whatever else. Okay. Explain what is meant by the terms competitive antagonist. If I asked you to explain what is a competitive antagonist, what would you say? An antagonist is a drug molecule that binds to the receptor, has affinity for the receptor, but doesn't have intrinsic activity for the receptor, thereby which... I want you guys to see that's actually simple. I actually give you all the answers in class. The things I discuss in class are the things I want you to know. Does that make sense? The things I discuss with you guys in class are the things I want you to know. These questions I give you here, all of the answers I have discussed in class somewhere along the line. Yes. Was it the question or just stretching? Okay, stretching. Okay. And I think that's class for today. Do you want to go over one of these examples quickly? Okay, let's use one quickly. Let's take... okay, let's take the one about... I just mentioned the one about synergism. So synergism, I mentioned paracetamol and tramadol together. So if you take the both of them together, they actually they potentiate each other's effects. So alone, they're not as good as they are together. Together, when you take them together, you get an increased effect. They potentiate each other's effects. So both of them, the effects are pain relief this side, pain relief this side. Together, they give you maximum pain relief. So they potentiate each other's effect. Yes?
Like when I have the flu, I use a mix. It's Synthicon, ACC200, and Grenza C. Would that then be also a...
Synergism. Not really. So not one of those actually synergize on a pharmacological level. They all just act on different things and alleviate symptoms. So all flu medications just alleviate symptoms. So on the one side, you're making your phlegm looser, so it doesn't actually sit on your what do you call your voice box? Larynx. So on the one side, you're taking ACC200 to make the phlegm more soluble, so it doesn't sit on your voice box and cause you not to be able to start that voice thing. The ACC200, that's the main thing it does. On the other side, you're making less of a runny nose by using, not Lintagon, the other one? Corenza C. Corenza C has phenylephrine inside, which stimulates the alpha-1 receptors, giving vasoconstriction, thereby less flow of mucus. And the last one, Lintagon, doesn't have any evidence. Don't use it. Okay, but I think I've discussed enough. Do you want to use another example? Okay, bye.